The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning round again, the years keep rolling by.
So let me tell you a story about Harold Arlen. Harold was born and raised in Buffalo, New York. He was the son of the cantor at the local synagogue. And at an early age, he loved singing. At age 9, he was already a member of his father's choir. Loved to sing, learned how to play the piano, had a talent for it. His parents were not all that happy that he liked pop music, jazz. They would have preferred that he stuck with the liturgical music. He started a band, the Snappy Trio, and they got gigs, they worked, they made some money, and in fact, he did so well, kind of upgrading his band, and eventually joined the Buffalodians, the hottest, the coolest dance band in Buffalo, and they worked as often as they wanted, every day of the week, and he made good money. He quit high school so that he could pursue this musical career as a performer, as a singer and a piano player. And while his former classmates in high school are saving up their 25 cents allowance, he bought the first Model T Ford in his neighborhood. Well, the Buffalodians were doing so well that they thought perhaps they could make it in the big city. And they all went to New York. They had some time booked performances, and things were going sufficiently well that they could have made it, except for the infighting that happened. And there's some weird story about the leader of the Buffalodians running into Harold Arlen's closed fists. At any rate, the Buffalodians, for the most part, went back to Buffalo. Harold Arlen stayed in New York, rented a room, shared with another up-and-coming performer, and he got a job with a musical review called Great Day. This is not a play. This is a series of songs, dances, sketches. And Harold has one song to sing. He sings the song, accompanies himself on the piano. But he's at the rehearsals every day. This is months in advance of the opening of the show. The singers, the dancers, the chorus line. Of course, they don't have the full orchestra. When the review opens, they'll have a full orchestra, but during rehearsals, they just have the one pianist. And the pianist becomes ill. He asks Harold to sit in for him, take over as a rehearsal pianist. So, when you've got the conductor there and the whole orchestra, and you've got a chorus line, everybody's got to get in sync, and you got to know where the downbeat is. You got this conductor there, but rehearsal pianist, he can't wave his hands around. He's got to play the piano. So what does the rehearsal pianist do to get everybody in sync? And then he goes on with the song, the number, whatever it is. Harold's taken over this job. Here's the choreographer, the director. Harold, take it from the top. Harold, take it from the 12th measure. Well, Harold gets bored playing this little vamp over and over again, and he mixes it up a little bit. He might play Well, Harry Warren happens to be sitting in on one of the rehearsals. Harry Warren later went on to write Chattanooga Choo Choo, the first song to go gold. We're in the Money, which you can hear on every day when the stock market is up. Hundreds of songs, very successful. But at this point in time, he is the lowest level employee at Warner Publishing, a music publishing company. And he sees a lot of music. He plays the piano for people who are thinking about buying music. This is before, commercial radio and commercial recordings were so widely and readily available. So you went to a publisher, you heard the music, some guy would play it for you. That guy was plugging the songs. He was a plugger. He knew what would sell and what would stay on the shelf. He says to Harold, that noodling around you're doing on the piano, you ought to work that up into a full song. You might have something there. So Harold follows his advice, and Harry takes him over to the publishing company and introduces him to an established lyricist, the guy who writes the words for the songs, but who was currently in need of a partner. They would typically work in teams. One guy wrote the music, the other guy wrote the words. Ted Koehler listens to this song that Harold plays for him on the piano, and he says two words: get happy. And they work on it, and this is the song they wrote. Forget your troubles, come on, get happy. You better chase all your cares away. Sing hallelujah, come on, get happy. Get ready for the judgment day. The sun is shining, come on, get happy. The Lord is waiting to take your hand. Sing hallelujah, come on, get happy. We're going to the promised land. We're heading across the river, wash your sins away in the tide. It's all so peaceful on the other side. Forget your troubles, come on, get happy. You better chase all your cares away. Sing hallelujah, come on, get happy. Get ready for the judgment day. Get Happy, it was Harold Arlen's first big hit, written with Ted Koehler in 1929. He was no longer just a singer and piano player. Now he was a composer.
I'd like you to think back to your first paycheck. I don't mean the one where you washed windows or you babysat or you worked at McDonald's for a few months. I mean your real paycheck from your real job, the job you thought about, the job you trained for, maybe went to college for, the job that you intended to be your career, and you got that job, and then you got your first paycheck. Now, there's things you had to do with that first paycheck, but did you do something special for yourself? What I did was I bought myself a pen and pencil set. I didn't need a pen and pencil set. It was a little outside the range of what I should have spent on myself, but that's what I wanted. I'd seen it in a magazine, one of those beautiful, colorful write-ups, and there it is in all its glory. Wooden. It was made of wood, and I have an affinity for things made of wood. A pen and pencil set. It looks so delicate and so feminine. This is what I planned to do when I had extra money. The article said that it was available at fine jewelry stores in your area. Well, there was a jewelry store in my area, a couple blocks away. And so when I'd paid the bills I had to pay and put down money on other things that had to have a money on them, I went into that jewelry store. It wasn't very big. And lo and behold, there's a glass cabinet with pen and pencil sets, and some of them were wood. Well, I looked at those beautiful sets in beautiful wooden boxes, and I saw maple wood, oak wood, cherry wood, chestnut wood. they were beautiful. Some had golden tips, some of them had silver tips. Gold was a little bit ostentatious for me. So I was looking at the silver tips. And the owner came out from the back and said, "Oh, I see you're admiring those sets. Would you like to see one?" I said, "Oh, I'd love to see one. May I see the maple?" And so he brought it out. And the wood of the box was much darker. That wasn't maple. And in the box, there was this silk lining. It just had a little indentation for each article to sit in, the pen toward the back, the pencil toward the front. They were just captivating me. He said, go ahead, pick one up. And he gave me a piece of paper. He said, "Go ahead, use it." And I picked it up, and I just closed my eyes and felt that wood, the grain all the way coming from top to bottom. And it fit. It just fit in my hand. I was holding the pen, and I started to write with it. And it had a thin point. And for someone with a clumsy handwriting, a thin point is much better. I was very pleased with it. He said, do you feel the sheen on it? And I said, "Yes, I do." He said, "The longer you use that pen, and the longer you touch it, the more you touch it, your oils and that sheen will combine to make a brand new coating. It will be specific and unique to you." And, oh man, this is beautiful. So it had a silver clip. It had a ring around the center that said Hallmark. And I've always cared enough to give the best and buy the best. And then the silver tip on the bottom. Sold. $65. That was an extravagance. But I figured I'm going to have this all my life. Well, I took that pen and pencil box home, and I admired it again, and I picked up the pen. And the pen, that said Mom to me. My mother had an elegant handwriting. Now, I don't know why it skipped me, but she had mastered the Palmer method in school. She could make those spirals that looked 3D on the paper, perfect. And all her letters were just so elegant. She deserved a pen like this. She also deserved to write on parchment, but she didn't have either one of those things. So that pen said Mom to me. The pencil, my dad was a mechanical engineer, and he had mechanical pencils. And I always thought they were so much fun. But Nancy, that's not a toy, it's a tool. Please don't play with it. You play with it by making the lead go out and come back in. You play with it by taking the cover off, taking the eraser off, taking the extra lead out and breaking it. Not a good idea. But he would let me use one in his presence. And so even though this pencil was not as hefty as the ones he had, I think of my dad when I used a pencil. Now, they both had very different lives. The pen, they both went in my pocketbook at first. They both went in my pocketbook in the box at first, but eventually I got rid of the box. And that pen signed so many documents. It signed so many slips, credit slips. You know, when you go to the store and you buy something and they give you a pen to sign, no, I wouldn't take their pen. I'd take my pen out, because this was important to me. Birthday cards, anniversary cards, wedding cards, invitations, letters. Everything was done in that pen. All of the transactions when my husband and I bought our first piece of property, all the transactions were done with that pen. All the checks that bought that land. That huge check. The cashier in the bank said, "I've never seen a check that big." I said, "I never wrote a check that big." To bring the first installment of wood that built our log home. That pen was used on all the paperwork that I had to sign around my husband's death. That pen has so many memories. The pencil, now that had a totally different life. It jammed by the middle of the first year. it wouldn't twist, the lead wouldn't go out, the lead wouldn't go in. I got myself a thin piece of metal and slammed it down. It wouldn't break the lead up, nothing would work. And put it in the drawer. One day I took it out and I was playing with it, debating on whether I should take a wrench to this, but it wasn't the way to go. And my sister called me. Now, when my sister had married, she and her husband had moved to Kansas City. And so she said, "What are you doing, sis?" And I said, "Oh, I'm fiddling with this pencil of mine." "The Hallmark pencil?" I said, "Yeah, it jammed and I can't use it." "Well, take it back to the store." "Duh, I tried that. The store's no longer there." "Well, take it to a Hallmark store." I'm not much of a shopper. I said, "Hallmark has their own stores?" "Yes." "Fine." And lo and behold, the mall a couple miles away had a Hallmark store. So I took it in there, and no, Hallmark didn't make those pen and pencil sets anymore, and no, they didn't have any idea what I could do. A couple weeks later, when my sister and I talked again, the pencil came up, and I said, I bottomed out. She said, "Well, send it back to Hallmark." Hallmark is the home base of the Hallmark company. And my sister is a Hallmark addict. She's got everything Hallmark. You get a letter from her and you turn it over, it's got a Hallmark seal to close it. She's just, in her earlier days especially, the house was full of everything Hallmark. She said, "Why don't you send it back to the company? Ask them what to do about it." She's the younger sister, but sometimes she comes up with some good ideas. So she gave me the address, and I tried it. And I wrote them this letter with the pen and told them how much this pen and pencil set meant to me. And off it went. Didn't hear, nothing happened. Weeks went by, and I gave up on it, a lost cause. Until one day, a box came in the mail from Kansas City, Hallmark. I was excited. I opened it up, and there was a letter, so I calmed myself, and I read the letter first. "Dear Nancy," dear Nancy, wow. "Thank you for being a Hallmark customer. Unfortunately, we no longer make wooden pen and pencil sets. But I walked around the factory until I found a pencil. It's not maple, and it's not silver, but I hope you will accept it, and it will serve you well." I opened up the box. The rest of the way, there was my pencil. They'd put mine back in. And there was a rosewood pencil. It was beautiful. It's a little bit different than my set. For one thing, it had a golden tip and a golden band, but it didn't have a clip to hold into your pocket or to hold into your pocketbook. I put it in my hand. Same feel. Just beautiful. And I introduced it to my maple pen. They hit it right off the bat. But before I started using it, no clip, no silver band. I took my pencil apart, put the silver band on the rosewood bottom with the gold tip and the maple top. I have the most unique pencil in all the world. This pencil has served me well. One of the things that I do with it a lot is first drafts of what I write. I go to writing workshops every summer, and all my first drafts are in pencil. That pencil. Over the years, my fingers have they've lost some of their strength, and my hand slips down, the pen especially. So I've put a rubber tip on it so that I can hold it. It takes away some of the elegance, but it doesn't take away any of the beautiful memories. So again, I ask you, what did you buy for yourself that has a story? And who have you told that story to?
If you look at any piece of sheet music of a song written by Yip Harburg, you'll see that it says words by E. Y. Harburg, E.Y. Harburg. but everybody called him Yip. And everybody asks, how did he get the name Yip? You were going to ask that.
I was going to ask that, yeah.
I preempted your asking. So I know of two explanations of how he got the nickname Yip. One is that as a youngster, he was a ball of energy. He was fast on his feet. He would run around like a little squirrel. And so he got the nickname Little Squirrel. In Yiddish, Yipsel.
Yes.
Now, one variation of that story is that his friends started calling him Yipsel or Yip. Another variation, his mother called him Yipsel. The only problem with that story is that the word for little squirrel in Yiddish is vevrikele. It's a good story, though. The other explanation I've heard is that as a teenager, as a young adult, he was very active in the Young People's Socialist League, the YPSL. If you try to pronounce those initials, YPSL, you get Yipsel. And so he became known as Yipsel, Yip. His friends would refer to him as the Yipper. He was a co-owner in the 20s, back in the 20s again, of the Consolidated Electrical Appliance Company. Now think, in the 20s, the roaring 20s, electricity is still kind of a new thing, and most households did not have electricity. You had to add that in. And instead of taking the rugs out onto the line and beating them, you wanted a vacuum cleaner. Instead of washing clothing in the tub with the washboard, you wanted a washing machine. And instead of having that ice box and the ice man delivering, you wanted an electric refrigerator. The electric appliance business was very good to Yip Harburg and his co-owners. All through the 20s, of course, until 1929. The crash, Yip loses the business. He's tens of thousands of dollars in debt, and he has no way forward. He's got a wife and 2 kids. What's he going to do? He talks to an old high school friend. They went to Townsend High School together. They went to City College of New York together. When Yip went into business selling appliances, his friend went into the songwriting business with his younger brother, George. So I'm talking about Ira Gershwin. He and Yip went to school together, and while in school, they wrote for the school newspaper. They wrote, little articles, funny little stories, light verse, and in fact, they were so good at it that some of their pieces were published in the regular newspapers. And so Ira says, Yip, you ought to try your hand at songwriting. You could do this. It's not that different from light verse, lyrics. And he goes further and gives him some money to, keep him going, and introduces him to Jay Gorney, a composer who had already had some success, was established, knew the business. So Jay Gorney and Yip Harburg team up, and they have a successful show in 1929, Earl Carroll's Sketchbook, and it helps Yip get the next job. 1932, one of the Schubert brothers wants to revive a successful musical revue from 1926. It's called Americana. Going to have some new songs in it. Going to make some money. So it's...
Speak for yourself, guitar.
Yeah. It's booked to open in October of 1932. And the way they would do shows then, I suppose, same thing now. You've got an opening date set, and you back up from there, and you start with the writers, songwriters, sketch writers, and then you get into performers, and then you have the rehearsals, and you put the whole show together, and it opens. Vincent Youmans, this is, T for two, two for T, that Vincent Youmans is hired as the composer who's going to write the music. Yip is going to write the lyrics. They're on a schedule. Vincent Youmans writes the music for the opening number and disappears, takes the money and runs. And Yip is under contract. He's in a bind now. He's responsible for writing the lyrics. He's got nobody to write the music. So he scrambles, and because they're now behind schedule, he hires Jay Gorney, with whom he'd been writing anyway. He hires Harold Arlen, who had his big hit a few years earlier, and now with Ted Koehler was writing songs for the Cotton Club. He hires Burt Lane, and he hires another lyricist, a young fellow from Georgia named John Mercer. You might recognize his better-known name, Johnny Mercer, not a big stretch. And they write all the songs for this show, Americana. As I said before, the way these guys made their money was not just from being paid to write the songs for the show. The royalties that they got from sheet music sales and eventually from recordings, that was where the bread and butter. Unfortunately, none of the songs from this show became popular, with one exception. I want to put you in the audience in 1932, and you're going to hear this song in the middle of the show. But anyone in that audience in October of 1932 would have known, one, presidential election is coming up. The Democratic candidate for president is the governor of New York, Franklin Roosevelt. Franklin Roosevelt began his campaign in April of 1932 with a radio address broadcast from Albany, New York, in which he talked about the forgotten man. He laid out the fundamentals of an economic strategy to get out of the Great Depression. And what he said is, instead of focusing on the big banks and the big industrialists, we need to focus on the economic base of the pyramid, the economic pyramid, the common man, the farmers, the factory workers, the people who built the country with their hands, the forgotten man in terms of public policy. So the notion of the forgotten man, that phrase was well established, the idea of building the economy from the base of the pyramid, not from the top of the pyramid. Another thing that you would have known sitting in that audience in 1932, the veterans of World War I, in recognition of their service, had been given certificates which they would be able to cash in 1945 and receive some payment. On average, they would get $1,000 apiece, according to the amount of service that they had done during World War I. But given the Depression and these men are out of work, destitute, they wanted to cash in their certificates now, so they could get by. And as a demonstration to pressure Washington, they were camping out in a Hooverville in Washington, D.C. all summer long. So if you were in that audience in 1932, nobody had to tell you these facts. Nobody had to tell you that we were in a Great Depression. This is the song that became the anthem of the Great Depression. Once I built a railroad, I made it run, I made it race against time. Once I built a railroad, and now it's done. Brother, can you spare a dime? Once I built a tower way up to the sun of bricks and mortar and lime. Once I built a tower and now it's done. Buddy, can you spare a dime? Once in khaki suits, gee, we looked swell, full of that Yankee Doodle-dee-dum. 500,000 boots went slogging through hell, and I was the kid with the drum. Say, don't you remember? You called me Al, it was Al all the time. Say, don't you remember, I was your pal. Buddy, can you spare a dime?
Oh,
1932. Brother, Can You Spare a Dime? Words by Yip Harburg, music by Jay Gorney, the anthem of the Great Depression.
The story comes from India. There once was a husband and wife who had a son. One son, one child. And he was an awful disappointment to his father. His father, the boy wasn't smart, the boy wasn't clever, the boy wasn't efficient, the boy wasn't funny, the boy wasn't an athlete, the boy wasn't. The father had almost given up on him. But the mother said, don't be foolish. Someday that boy is going to do something brilliant. Yeah. The father wasn't convinced, but he loved his wife and he gave her the benefit of the doubt. He said, well, one thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to arrange a marriage for him. Nobody's going to want that good for nothing. The wife just rolled her eyes. But I'll give him another chance. I'll come up with a test for him. And again, the mother rolled her eyes. A test. So the father came up with this plan. Called the boy in. He was really a young man. And he said, put out your hand. And his son put out the hand, and the father put in his hand one coin. Not a very high denomination. The boy looked at his father, did the coin. He said, yes, father? Father said, I want you to go to the market, and I want you to buy something to eat, something to drink for the family, not just yourself, something for all of us to eat, to drink, something to plant, and something to give to the cow. You're kidding, right, Father? I never kid. And the father walked away. The young man looked at that coin. He wants me to fail. He wants me to fail. He walked out the door and started walking toward the village, scuffing his feet, mumbling to himself, this is ridiculous, this is stupid, no one could do this. He sat down by the river just before he got to the town. This is embarrassing. He didn't even want to go into the town. And he put his hands on his head and he's mumbling to himself. And just then, the blacksmith's daughter came out of town with a jar to collect water. And she saw this poor, pathetic young man sitting on that rock, mumbling. She walked over, are you all right? Is there anything I can do for you? Well, a pleasant voice, and someone said, what can I do for you? And he just poured it all out. My father is so strict. My father doesn't give me a chance. My father doesn't. All the things that young men say about their fathers. And then he said, now I got this coin. And I've got to go to market, and I've got to buy for the family something to eat, something to drink, something to plant, and something to give to the cow. It's ridiculous. And she looked at him and said, I'd buy a watermelon. And then she went down to the river to get her water, and he sat there and watched her go. Watermelon. You can eat it. You can get the juice and drink it. You can plant the seeds, and the cow will love the rock. He jumped up, and he ran into town, and he got the biggest watermelon he could for that coin, which wasn't huge, but it was substantial. And he took it home holding that like, don't fall, don't break. And he got it home. And he ran up to his parents and he said to his father, "Here, Father, something to eat, something to drink, something to plant, something to give the cow." Well, his father looked at him in disbelief. The boy started to walk away. His father said, Come back here. Did you think of this all by yourself? Well, the boy was not a liar. He said, "No, Father, actually I met a girl on the road." Mother's ears perked up. "A girl? Who?" "I think she's the blacksmith's daughter. She gave me the idea." Mother and father converse. They're going to invite the blacksmith and his family to come to dinner that night. And they do. And she's lovely. The mother approved too. And as time went on, the two young ones fell in love and they got married. On the day of the wedding, the boy and his bride take off for their new home, and the father and the mother walk home together, and the father looks at his wife and he says, "You know what? He didn't really pass my test. She thought of it, not him. What am I going to do with that boy?" And the mother said, "You're wrong. You're wrong, husband. He did something wonderful." The husband said, "What?" "He married a brilliant wife. Just like you did, my husband."
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, but I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning round again, the years keep rolling by.